Leonard Siffleet is an Australian soldier who was executed by the Japanese military after being held in a Japanese military prison for 2 weeks after being bullied and tortured. The order was given by Vice Admiral Michiaki Kamada. The executor and direct executioner was Officer Yasuno Chikau. The place of execution was a beach near the town of Ape in eastern New Guinea, then occupied by the Japanese. 2 more people were executed together with him. The execution was carried out in the afternoon of October 24, 1943. Leonard was born into a large family of a farmhand of Dutch origin on January 14, 1916, and after finishing school, in the late 30s, he tried to join the Sydney Police, but, unfortunately, did not pass the competition due to poor eyesight. After that, he tried to go to the police Coast Guard units, where the requirements were lower, and in August 1940 he began working at the Australian Reserve Army Base in Richmond. But 3 months later an accident happened, his mother died, and he was forced to quit the service and go back home. He got a job as a salesman in a store, and also met his future bride named Clarice Lane. In September 1942, he enlisted in the reservists, the Australian Army of the Second Echelon, where he had to spend several hours a day in training. At the same time, Leonard managed to study at a technical college in Melbourne, majoring in radio communications. After completing his studies, Siffleet got a job in the intelligence department in Melbourne. After completing his training, he was transferred to the Dutch section. This group was part of a joint project of Australia, the United States, England, and the Netherlands to organize and deploy covert coastal surveillance detachments in Japanese-occupied territory. A small detachment of 4 men, which included Leonard, was supposed to be assigned to monitor the coast of New Guinea, near the city of Jayapura, in the territory occupied by the enemy. Siffleet joined the group under the command of Dutch Sergeant Staverman. There were also 2 people in the composition, Privates Paddywall and Ree Herring, indigenous people from those places, to communicate with the sympathetic local population. The group's trek through the northern mountains of New Guinea began unsuccessfully. Sergeant Staverman and Paddywall separated from the group and were ambushed by hostile natives. The sergeant was killed. The locals captured the private, from where he soon escaped and rejoined the group. The Aborigines in this area were hostile and clearly pro-Japanese. Siffleet realized that the reconnaissance mission had failed. The Japanese had most likely already found out about his group. As a senior officer, he decided to destroy the code in ciphers, break and throw out the radio, since it was necessary to leave quickly, without unnecessary cargo, and the natives could transfer the captured working radio to the Japanese. After the transmission of this message on the radio, communication with the group ceased and nothing was heard about it. But his fiancée, despite the absence of any news about Leonardo, received a letter from the intelligence service in September 1943 that her fiancé was all right. After the war, it became known that the group quickly went to the Dutch border, but near the town of Ape, occupied by the Japanese, was ambushed by a detachment of 100 natives. As a result of a short battle during which Siffleet wounded one of the attackers, a group of 3 soldiers was captured and handed over to the Japanese authorities. For 2 weeks they were interrogated and tortured, seeking information from them about the objectives of the mission, routes, ciphers, and, of course, the whereabouts of other similar groups. As you know, the Japanese know how to torture, and whether Leonard Siffleet said anything under these tortures is unknown. Those who will doubt his loyalty to duty due to the complete lack of information about whether he betrayed anything or anyone, can be advised to first experience at least 1/100th of what he could have experienced in Japanese captivity and then judge the soldier. Well, the most important of the proofs that he remained faithful to the oath is the execution of these 3 prisoners of war. The sentence, which was approved by Admiral Michiaki Kamada, was executed on the beach of the city of Adape by Officer Yasuno Chikao in the afternoon of October 24, 1943. One of the Japanese soldiers photographed the moment of execution for his memory, probably to raise his samurai spirit and to prove his ruthlessness towards enemies. These photos were found during a search of the body of a Japanese major by the American military in April 1944, after the end of the battle in the same area. They were reprinted in Australian newspapers and magazines, as well as in the American magazine Life, and thus became known to virtually all soldiers who fought in this war against Japan. Probably, these photos immediately began to gather their bloody harvest, and many Japanese soldiers who came out with their hands up or were simply captured in other circumstances received their bullet because of them, and many wounded died without help. The coalition soldiers wanted to avenge the death of their comrade in arms under such terrible circumstances, and the suffering of the enemy ceased to arouse their sympathy. Admiral Michiaki Kamada, who ordered the execution, surrendered to Australian Major General James Edwards on September 8, 1945. He was handed over to the Dutch, who tried him not only for this criminal sentence, but also for crimes against the local population. He was sentenced to death and died on October 18, 1947, probably not the death of a samurai. The executor of the sentence himself was captured, was identified, and tried for murder committed with a sword, which sounds very prosaic for a samurai. Subsequently, he was sentenced to death, which was commuted to a 10-year sentence, and there is a version that this was done in response to cooperation with the investigation. These two photos are the only evidence of crimes committed against captured soldiers by the Japanese military, which fell into the hands of the Americans and were made public. It is likely that there were actually more of them, but they were hidden or destroyed by their owners when they were captured. Siffleet's body was never found, and the Japanese did not report the place of his burial. Presumably, together with his comrades, he was buried in an unmarked grave at the mouth of the Rehu River in the eastern part of Adape Beach, where locals planted a coconut palm to mark this place. Siffleet's name is stamped on the War Memorial in Papua New Guinea and in the Hall of Honour of the Australian War Memorial in Canberra. Documents related to Siffleet's capture and execution are kept in Australia, including correspondence with government agencies, as well as his letters to his family and a personal prayer book. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to my channel and like it. Write in the comments on which topic to make the next video.